The East India Company, once a trading venture, had become a major territorial power in India by the late 18th century. Its growing influence and wealth, however, came with rampant corruption and mismanagement.
The British Parliament, recognizing the need to regulate the company's affairs, passed the Regulating Act of 1773. This act, though well-intentioned, proved inadequate. It failed to curb the company's excesses and created confusion regarding the lines of authority in India.
The Regulating Act aimed to bring the company under parliamentary oversight. However, its provisions lacked clarity and were open to interpretation, leading to conflicts and inefficiencies. The need for a more comprehensive and robust system of governance became increasingly apparent.
The clamor for reform grew louder in Britain. The impeachment of Warren Hastings, the Governor-General of Bengal, on charges of corruption, further highlighted the urgent need for a more effective system of governance in India. This paved the way for a new act, one that would fundamentally reshape the relationship between Britain and India. Pitt's India Act of 1784.
The act aimed to address the shortcomings of its predecessor and establish a more balanced and accountable system. Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger, a rising star in British politics, spearheaded this landmark legislation.
Pitt's India Act sought to establish a system of dual control over British possessions in India. The act aimed to strike a balance between the commercial interests of the East India Company and the British Crown's growing political responsibilities.
The Act aimed to achieve this by clearly delineating the roles and responsibilities of the company and the British government. It sought to ensure better administration, reduce corruption, and ultimately safeguard British interests in India.
The Act's primary objective was to improve the administration of British India. It sought to curtail the company's unchecked power while simultaneously leveraging its experience and resources. This dual control system, as it came to be known, was central to Pitt's India Act. It represented a significant shift in the governance of India, marking the beginning of a more direct role for the British Crown in Indian affairs.
The Act established a system of dual control, dividing responsibility for British India between the East India Company and the British Crown. The company retained control over its commercial affairs and day-to-day administration.
However, all political matters, including foreign policy, war and peace, and the appointment of key officials, came under the purview of the British government. This division of power aimed to prevent the concentration of authority in a single entity and ensure checks and balances.
The Act led to the creation of two pivotal bodies: the Court of Directors, representing the company, and the Board of Control, representing the Crown. The Court of Directors, elected by the company's shareholders, continued to manage the company's commercial affairs. They oversaw trade, appointed company officials, and made decisions related to the company's financial and commercial operations.
The Board of Control, on the other hand, was a political body appointed by the British monarch. Its role was to supervise the company's political and administrative activities in India. The board played a crucial role in shaping British policies in India for the next century. It acted as a conduit between the British government and the East India Company, ensuring that British interests were safeguarded. This marked a new era of British involvement in India, one where the Crown's interests took precedence over the company's commercial ambitions. The creation of this board marked a significant shift in power dynamics. The British government, through the board, now had a direct say in the governance of India. The Board of Control comprised prominent figures from British politics, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Secretary of State. Their expertise and political acumen were deemed essential for guiding the company's actions in the complex political landscape of India. It effectively acted as a supervisory body, ensuring that the company's actions aligned with British interests. The board had the power to review and overturn decisions made by the Court of Directors in matters related to governance, war, and diplomacy. Section 4. The Board of Control, a balancing act. The Board of Control, a six-member body appointed by the Crown, became the primary instrument for asserting British control over the company's political and military affairs. Section 5. Legacy of Reform, Impact and Lasting Influence. Pitt's India Act of 1784 marked a turning point in British involvement in India.
While it did not completely eliminate the problems of corruption and mismanagement, it laid the groundwork for a more structured and accountable system of governance.
The Act's emphasis on separating commercial and political functions, though not always perfectly implemented, set a precedent for future administrative reforms.
The Act's legacy lies in its attempt to bring about a more balanced and regulated system of governance in British India. It acknowledged the need for greater accountability and paved the way for greater Crown involvement in Indian affairs.
The dual control system, though not without its flaws, represented a significant step towards a more centralized and efficient administration.
The Act's impact resonated throughout the next century of British rule. It laid the foundation for future administrative reforms and shaped the relationship between Britain and India.
The Act's emphasis on checks and balances, though not always perfectly implemented, set a precedent for future administrative reforms in India.